Let's dive right into this source material. Finding your voice, speaking English with confidence. This one feels different, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not like a grammar book or anything. It's really a personal story. Someone just walking us through how they got over that fear of speaking English.
Right. And that's probably why it's so useful for you listening, whether it's English or, any skill where you feel that fear holding you back.
Exactly. This gives those immediate kind of actionable insights.
Yeah.
It kicks off with a feeling I bet a lot of people recognize, being trapped inside my own mind.
Oh, yeah. That feeling where you get what people are saying, the words are kind of swirling in your head, but then nothing comes out when you try to speak.
Mm-hmm. You just freeze. You're worried about mistakes, worried people might, judge you or laugh.
And that fear, it's not just like uncomfortable. It actually stops you from practicing, right? From making connections.
Totally. The source mentions this specific moment in a coffee shop. A tourist asked something in English.
And they understood it perfectly.
Perfectly. But couldn't reply. Couldn't get the words out.
Just froze. Ended up just, nodding and pointing.
Yeah. And afterwards just feeling awful, embarrassed, and regretting missing a chance to, actually use the language.
That moment, the source says, that was the turning point.
Sometimes it takes that, doesn't it? That real moment of frustration to push you. You realize the fear is actually costing you something.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then. Let's unpack this journey. What were the specific steps they took? What changed in their thinking?
Yeah, what were those aha moments that let them go from, being paralyzed by fear to actually speaking with confidence?
We want to trace that path and see how those lessons apply, maybe not just to English, but to facing down fear whenever you're trying to master something new.
We're essentially looking at how confidence gets built step by step, using this personal story as our guide.
Okay, let's get into it. So, after that coffee shop thing, that moment of regret, the first step wasn't some big revelation. It was just sitting down that night.
And making a plan. Actually deciding, okay, I'm going to do something about this.
It sounds so simple, but it's that conscious decision, isn't it? Not just feeling bad, but taking action.
Exactly. And the initial practice methods. Also really simple, like writing down common phrases, things you actually use.
Like, can I help you? Or I don't understand. Stuff like that.
Yeah, functional things. And then, importantly, practicing saying them out loud.
Even, they mentioned, practicing in front of a mirror, which sounds maybe a bit awkward.
It can feel awkward. But think about what it's doing. You're getting used to the physical act of making those sounds. Your mouth, your voice.
Building muscle memory, almost.
Sort of, yeah. And it's about tiny successes. Saying, can I help you?
Okay.
In the mirror. That's a little win. It starts to chip away the fear of just opening your mouth.
Okay. And around the same time, they were listening to native speakers online and had this key realization. What was that?
They noticed that, native speakers, they often use pretty simple words, short sentences. It wasn't super complex grammar all the time.
Yeah. Right. Not like textbook English.
Not at all.
Right.
And that led to this huge insight. Didn't need to be perfect, just needed to try.
Why is that so hard for learners to really believe, though? That idea that perfection isn't the goal.
Well, I think the fear often comes from that pressure, doesn't it? The pressure to sound perfect immediately, like a native speaker.
Yeah.
So realizing that, hey, effective communication is often simple. That just removes this massive weight. It shifts the focus from impossible perfection to, achievable connection.
And that realization gave them the courage to make a pretty big commitment.
Yeah, deciding to speak English every single day, no matter what.
Even if they messed up.
Exactly. The mantra was, one sentence a day is better than none. It's about consistency, building that habit.
Small steps, but every day.
Right. And from doing it alone, the next step was naturally bringing someone else in. Practicing with a cousin who is also learning.
Just 10 minutes every afternoon, the source says. Using dictionaries, phones, keeping it kind of light and fun, even though it was hard.
It sounds like a really low-stakes way to start interacting. How did that affect the fear level?
And they noticed after just a few weeks, they weren't quite as scared. They could actually handle simple questions like, what do you like to do? Or answering, I like to play football.
See, that supportive, non-judgmental space, it bridges that gap between practicing alone and talking to, another actual human, building confidence bit by bit.
And at the same time, they were doing immersion stuff, too. Watching English videos with subtitles.
But not just watching passively. Pausing, repeating the phrases,
Yeah.
trying to copy the pronunciation, the rhythm.
Training their ears and mouth, as they put it.
Exactly. It's active engagement with the sound of the language.
Yeah.
Really important for speaking more naturally.
Okay, so self-practice, practice with a cousin. Then came a bigger jump.
Yeah.
Joining an online language exchange group.
Which meant speaking with strangers.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a level up in terms of scariness.
Oh, for sure. And they admit they were nervous,
Yeah.
but they did it anyway. Introduced themselves, spoke slowly.
And how did that go?
It was actually really positive. People in the group were kind, patient. Some were learning their language too, so there was this mutual understanding, this helping each other out.
So the fear they imagined wasn't really the reality they found.
Not at all. And that was the first time really talking with strangers. After each conversation, even with mistakes, they felt proud. They could feel themselves improving, getting more natural.
That must have been a huge confidence boost, validating all those smaller steps they'd taken.
Definitely. And it gave them the courage to think about, okay, what's next? What's an even bigger step?
Which turned out to be joining an actual in-person English conversation club in their city.
Right. Real people face to face. And that first day, the fear came rushing back.
Handshaking, seeing everyone else chatting easily, wanting to just bolt.
Yeah, that urge to leave was strong and showed, progress isn't always linear. New situations can bring back old fears.
But they didn't leave. They heard that inner voice saying, "You've come this far, don't stop now."
So they stayed. Sat quietly at first, just taking it in.
Until introductions. Heart pounding, stood up and managed to say, "Hello, my name is David. I'm learning English because I want to talk to people and travel."
Voice shaky, low.
Yeah.
But they did it. And the group's reaction.
Clapping. Smiles. Someone actually said, "Great job."
Wow, that must have felt incredible. A huge boost of confidence, they called it. It just shows putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, often gets met with support, not judgment.
Yeah. And the club wasn't just introductions. They did activities, games, things that required asking questions, giving opinions.
So they had to try, even if they didn't know the exact words. And crucially, when people corrected them, it was done kindly.
Which reinforces that idea that mistakes are okay, they're part of learning.
And that led to another really big realization for them.
What was that?
Most people are not focused on your grammar, they just want to understand you.
Ah, that's huge. How does really getting that change things when you're trying to speak?
It just shifts everything, doesn't it? The goal isn't perfect sentences. It's getting your meaning across. When you realize people are listening for the message, not hunting for grammar errors, so much pressure just evaporates.
You can relax a bit, focus on connecting.
Exactly. And they also talked to the club organizer afterwards, mentioned how nervous they'd been.
And the organizers shared their own story of starting out scared.
Yeah. Hearing that someone who seemed confident now had also started with fear. It just hammered home that idea. Everyone starts somewhere. Mistakes are just part of the journey.
It normalizes the whole struggle, makes it feel less like a personal failing.
That kind of validation is so powerful, gives you perspective, hope.
Okay, so the club was a big step. Then came applying it in the wild, so to speak. A real-world breakthrough.
Right. Meeting a tourist, someone from Canada, in a museum.
And this time, when the tourist spoke to them, no freezing.
For the first time, no debilitating fear. They actually talked for about 15 minutes. Made mistakes, sure, but they were understood. They even laughed together.
That's not practice anymore. That's real communication, authentic connection. What a confirmation of progress.
Absolutely. And that success fueled them to actively seek out more chances. Talking to tourists in parks, museums, offering simple help like, "Do you need help?" or "Are you looking for something?"
These little interactions, they called them big victories.
And they were. Each one weakens that fear barrier a little more, showed that communication was possible, even enjoyable.
Then volunteering at a cultural event, having specific lines to practice, answering questions. It all helped make using English feel less like a test.
Yeah, less like a performance and more like just a tool you use, which led to that great analogy they used.
Ah, the muscle analogy. Speaking English is like a muscle.
Exactly. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. It perfectly captures that need for consistency and practice.
And connected to that was a huge shift in focus.
Yeah, moving away from trying to be perfect, focusing entirely on communicating, not trying to impress anybody.
Accepting mistakes, even laughing at themselves. And realizing, importantly, that when others laughed, it was with them, not at them.
That relaxed attitude sounds like it changed everything. Made it fun instead of terrifying.
And that relaxation allowed English to just seep into daily life more naturally.
Right. like changing their phone language to English, listening to English music, even just talking to themselves at home.
Simple things like, I'm going to cook now. Why is that kind of integration so effective? Just narrating your day.
Because, as the source puts it, it actively trained my brain to think in English. It stops being this separate subject you study and starts being part of how you live.
So learning isn't just in the classroom or during practice time?
No, it happens in life, all around you. That's such a powerful idea.
It really is. And this whole story just maps out that process of breaking down the fear of speaking to strangers, which seemed impossible at first.
That fear of looking foolish,
Yeah.
or just not being understood at all. Those are really strong barriers in your head.
But then there was that other key moment at the train station.
Oh, yeah. An older man needed help, didn't speak their language.
Yeah.
Suddenly it wasn't a choice. They had to speak English.
No time to think or worry, just had to act.
Right. Forced to use everything they'd learned up to that point. And the amazing part,
They were understood.
perfectly understood. And that simple moment changed the way I saw everything.
Wow. It just reinforced that earlier discovery, didn't it? People aren't grammar police. They just want to connect, understand.
A powerful discovery, they call it. It just sliced through all that built-up fear.
And that seems to be when the fear really started to fade.
Yeah. The focus went 100% to communication. Using hands, facial expressions, whatever it took, whatever helped me get the message across.
They got bolder, too. Started initiating conversations instead of waiting to be spoken to.
Simple openers like,
Yeah.
Hi, where are you from?
Mhm.
Or what brings you here? And realizing every single interaction, no matter how small, was a chance to learn.
The strategy really became clear. Start small and grow from there. It's not about overnight fluency. It's about steady progress.
And handling those inevitable moments of not understanding or not being able to explain something.
They didn't give up. They just smiled and asked, can you repeat that? Or how do you say that again?
And found that people were almost always happy to help. That vulnerability actually worked for them.
It built connections, facilitated learning, and led to this feeling of finally belonging.
Yeah, feeling like they belonged in the English-speaking world, even without being perfect.
And you could see it, apparently. They walked taller, smiled more, felt proud, started actively looking for chances to speak English, not avoiding them.
Realizing the fear had only ever lived in my mind, facing it consistently brought freedom to speak, to connect, and to grow.
And that living the language thing continued. Watching movies without subtitles eventually, listening to podcasts while doing chores.
Reading anything in English articles, menus, whatever, just
Yeah.
making it a normal part of the day, not a study session.
Working at a hostel came up too as a great practice environment.
Oh yeah, described as perfect.
Yeah.
Constantly meeting international travelers, making mistakes, getting corrected kindly, and actually remembering the corrections because they happened in a real context.
No teachers, no grammar books, just real conversations. That seems key.
And personal practice didn't stop either. Keeping a notebook for new phrases, writing short paragraphs, even recording themselves speaking.
Why is recording yourself helpful, do you think? Seems a bit intimidating.
It can be, but it gives you that objective feedback, You hear yourself how others hear you. Helps you notice pronunciation things or where your rhythm feels off. It's a good tool for self-correction once you feel ready.
And eventually the payoff. People started saying, your English is really good.
That external validation. Not just a compliment, but real proof that the hard work pays off.
It confirmed their view of fluency. It's about practice, persistence, and the courage to speak, even when you're scared.
Exactly. And with that confidence, they started looking outwards, helping others.
Remembering their own shyness, they volunteered as a speaking partner for new learners. Low-pressure groups, friendly chats.
Because they knew what that fear felt like, they could be really empathetic, giving specific encouragement like, you said that very well, or that's a great way to express it.
Realizing how much those kind words matter when you're feeling vulnerable.
Definitely. And they shared practical tips that worked for them when helping others. Keep topics simple, use body language, model how to ask for help, like, I don't know how to say this.
The goal was always keeping the conversation going, not to be perfect.
And helping others actually helped them too. Teaching makes you think about the language differently, right? Reinforces your own understanding.
It showed that learning never really ends, and sharing what you know is rewarding in itself.
And they make this point about how English is just everywhere now. Music, signs, obviously online communities, video games.
Joining forums or groups based on hobbies, photography, travel, books, and just interacting, commenting, asking questions, making friends across distances through that shared language.
That example of the online friendship with the person from Japan is lovely.
Yeah, weekly video calls, both speaking imperfect English but understanding each other, laughing, making mistakes, just keeping going.
It perfectly illustrates the point.
Right.
The goal is to communicate and connect, not necessarily perfect grammar.
And they kept creating those real-world moments, too, going to tourist spots, offering help, using English day to day, feeling like a real speaker.
And when they didn't know a word, the big change was they didn't panic anymore, and that made all the difference. They'd stay calm, use other words, or ask.
That ability to navigate hiccups without shutting down, that's real confidence in action.
So English became this global tool, a bridge between cultures, people, ideas, and they felt they could walk across it with ease.
Not just a learner anymore, but a speaker. Finding English in unexpected places started to feel like home.
The world felt smaller, more open, more possible. And this whole story, this whole journey, leads to some direct advice for you, the listener.
Yeah, especially if you're someone who wants to speak English or do anything new but feels afraid or unsure. They say point blank, I understand, I've been there.
And they offer this promise, based on everything they went through. The fear you feel now will not last forever. The more you speak, the less fear you'll have.
Every single time you try, no matter how small that attempt feels, you are moving forward.
So the core actionable advice boils down to this. First, start small.
Talk to yourself, use that mirror, repeat sentences from videos, maybe record your voice. Those little habits add up.
Second, don't worry too much about grammar, especially at the start. Focus on just speaking and listening first. Build that momentum.
Third, mistakes. They're teachers. Embrace them, learn from them, and keep going. Don't let them stop you.
Fourth, you got to find people to talk to. Language groups, volunteering, online buddies. Create those opportunities.
Fifth, and this is crucial, don't wait for perfect English. Use the English you have now. Using it is how it gets better.
Sixth, remember, confidence comes from speaking, not before it. Even just 5 minutes of conversation a day can change your life.
Seventh, your English doesn't need to sound like a native speaker's. Just aim for clear, honest, confident communication. You're becoming a better version of yourself.
And finally, English is just a tool. The real power comes from you, your desire, your practice, your courage.
The last push is just speak, make mistakes, laugh, learn, connect. You don't need anyone's permission. You already have everything you need.
It's a journey, they stress, one word at a time, one sentence at a time.
So, yeah, we've traced this amazing transformation, really, from someone totally locked up by fear
To a confident speaker who's out there connecting with the world.
and the engine behind it wasn't some secret formula. It was just consistent effort, small steps, putting themselves in real situations, even when uncomfortable.
And that huge mindset shift, communication over perfection, every time.
The source wraps up with this thought. Learning English wasn't just about learning a language. It was about becoming someone new because of it.
Which leaves us with a really interesting question for you, listening now.
What version of yourself might you become? What doors could open if you stopped waiting for perfect, faced down that fear, and just started? Started speaking or started doing whatever that thing is you've been holding back on? What happens when you just begin?
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever been in that really frustrating situation where you understand perfectly what someone's saying in a new language, but when it's your turn to reply, you just,
Oh.
well, you freeze?
Oh, absolutely. It's like your brain just locks up, right? And the words, they feel trapped somewhere inside.
Yeah.
The source material we're diving into today, it captures that feeling perfectly, describing it as being trapped inside my own mind.
It's such a common barrier when you're learning, isn't it? And our source for this deep dive is this really compelling personal narrative called Finding Your Voice, Learning to Speak English. It shares one person's journey through exactly that challenge.
Yeah, it's a really powerful story about moving past that specific fear.
So our mission here is basically to take this detailed account, this personal story, and really pull out the most important strategies and mindset shifts. Think of this as like your shortcut to understanding how this one person managed to conquer their fear and really find their voice in a new language. All right, so let's start where the source begins. The initial state of just being stuck. You might know a decent amount of vocabulary, maybe understand phrases when you hear them,
Right.
but actually speaking, it just doesn't happen.
Exactly. The understanding is there, but the verbal response, it's blocked.
Mm-hmm.
And the source is very clear about the root cause here. It's intense fear. Specifically, that fear of making mistakes and the worry, that really paralyzing worry that people will, laugh at you.
And the source gives us such a vivid example of this, doesn't it? That coffee shop anecdote. This moment where they completely understood a tourist asking for help.
But the fear just hit so hard they couldn't manage a single word in return. Not one.
Just smiled, nodded, pointed. You can almost feel the embarrassment they describe afterward, that regret of missing that chance to practice.
Mm.
That's the feeling the source identifies as being completely trapped inside my own mind. It really highlights just how real and physical that fear can feel.
And it seems like it was precisely that moment, that embarrassment and frustration from missing the opportunity.
Hmm.
That was the turning point. The source describes sitting down that very night and making a really conscious decision to act, to actually make a plan.
And this wasn't just vague wishing, right? It was about taking intentional small steps. What were some of those first actions?
Well, first, writing down really common practical phrases. Things like, can I help you? Or maybe I don't understand. Basic stuff.
And this is key, isn't it? They didn't just write them down. They practiced saying them out loud.
Exactly. Looking in the mirror, working on trying to say them with some confidence. The source admits it felt really strange at first, almost awkward.
Oh, I bet. Speaking to yourself in a new language, especially into a mirror, it does feel unnatural.
For sure. But that initial strangeness, it gradually faded as they did it more. It really hammered home the importance of just vocalizing, even before you have someone else to talk to. It built a kind of basic physical comfort with the sounds.
This source also mentions gaining a really valuable insight just from listening carefully to others.
Yes, they spent time just listening to native speakers online, really paying attention. And the realization was, well, simple but kind of profound. Native speakers often use simple words and short, direct sentences.
That must have been a huge shift in perspective, right? Especially if you think you need perfect grammar and complex vocabulary to be understood.
Exactly. The powerful takeaway, and this is in the source's own words, was, I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to try. That insight immediately lowered the barrier. It wasn't about achieving instant fluency or sounding like a textbook anymore.
It was just about making an attempt.
Just trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And that apparently provided some significant motivation to keep going.
And that motivation was crucial because the next step sounds like it required real discipline, a commitment to consistent practice.
Yeah, they made a firm decision.
Yeah.
Speak English every single day, no matter what. They just accepted that mistakes were going to happen, that it was part of the process.
They even adopted a sort of mantra, didn't they? A simple, powerful reminder.
One sentence a day is better than none.
It's such practical advice. It breaks down this huge, overwhelming goal into something you can actually do daily.
Exactly. Just one sentence.
Yeah.
Even if it's wrong, it's still progress, right? It started building that essential habit.
So, okay, they had the commitment, they had the simple phrases. Where did they go next to actually start speaking with, another person?
They moved towards building confidence, but in a safe environment first. The source found someone they knew, a cousin, actually, who also wanted to improve their English.
That feels like such a smart move, a really low-pressure way to start. What did those practice sessions actually look like?
Well, they met every afternoon, but specifically for just 10 minutes, short and sweet. And the rule was, only speak in English during that time. They'd use dictionaries or phones for words they didn't know. The source remembers it being difficult, searching for words and stuff, but also fun because they were kind of in it together.
And the results, even after just a few weeks.
Pretty significant. They apparently weren't nearly as afraid as before. They could manage simple back and forth stuff, asking and answering questions like, what do you like to do? Or I like to play football. The source really highlights how these seemingly small steps, taken consistently with someone supportive, built a really tangible foundation of confidence. And they also incorporated other methods, to build comfort with the language's sound and rhythm.
Like using media. I remember reading that section.
Yes, exactly. Watching English videos with subtitles. But not just passively watching, they were actively pausing, repeating what they heard, really trying to copy the pronunciation and the natural rhythm of speech.
The source describes this as training my ears and mouth at the same time, which makes total sense.
It does. You're connecting the sounds you hear to the physical act of making that sound yourself.
It's not just about understanding words.
No, it's also about the physical mechanics of speaking, making the muscles in your mouth and tongue kind of familiar with these new sounds.
Okay, so with that foundation built, practicing with a trusted person, using media, The next logical step, though I imagine still pretty scary, was venturing out, speaking with people they didn't know.
Right. The source's next move was to find an online language exchange group. And you can really feel the nervousness described, before joining that first call, that anxiety.
But they pushed through it, and the experience itself was mostly positive.
Yeah, largely positive.
Yeah.
Introducing themselves slowly, finding that other people were generally kind and patient. And many in the group were also learning their language, which probably created a nice sense of mutual understanding and support.
Like a shared vulnerability.
Exactly. It became a supportive environment. And just speaking with strangers for the first time, even if it was online, was this massive hurdle overcome. The positive interactions proved it was actually possible, even with limited language skills.
And the feeling after each conversation. What did the source say?
Felt proud of myself.
Mhm.
Simple as that. Even with mistakes, the act of just speaking and being understood felt like a victory. And the realization started to solidify. The more I practiced, the easier it became.
Mm-hmm.
Talking, slowly but surely, began to feel more natural, less forced.
That success in smaller online groups then led to taking an even bigger leap, joining a local in-person English conversation club. Now, this sounds like the real test, facing that fear head-on.
Oh, it definitely was. The source vividly describes the intense fear on that first day, hands shaking, seeing other people chatting comfortably.
That feeling of wanting to run away.
Yeah, the strong urge to just turn around and leave.
But that inner voice, that determination that had been building up through all those small steps, it kicked in, right?
You come this far, don't stop now.
Yeah. And they didn't. They stayed and faced that moment of public introduction.
Stood up, and even though their voice was low and shaky, they managed to say it.
Hello, my name is David. I'm learning English because I want to talk to people and travel.
Wow, what a powerful moment. And the response from the group was unexpected.
It was incredibly encouraging, yeah. People clapped, they smiled, someone immediately said, "Great job." That positive external reaction right after pushing through such intense fear provided a huge boost of confidence. It showed that the vulnerability was met with support, not judgment. And being part of that club, well, it opened up even more opportunities for real interaction.
Right, like participating in group activities, playing games, asking questions, even giving opinions,
Yeah.
even when they didn't have the right words.
Exactly. It was about trying, about using the language they had at that moment. And when they made mistakes, people did correct them. But the source really emphasizes it was done kindly, gently. And through these natural corrections, they learned new expressions organically. And this consistent interaction led to a pretty crucial discovery, didn't it? About what really matters to the people you're talking to.
This is honestly one of the biggest takeaways from the source, I think. The realization that most people are not focused on your grammar. They just want to understand you.
Think about that. All that initial fear was about being perfect, sounding perfect.
Right. But the reality in these interactions was that people cared way more about the message, about understanding, than about flawless syntax.
That must be incredibly freeing. Just takes the pressure off.
Oh, completely. It fundamentally changes the game. It shifts the focus from, performance anxiety to actual connection. And finding solidarity also helped. Talking to an organizer who apparently had a similar journey, starting with fear, that made them feel less alone.
Yeah.
And it reinforced that idea that everyone starts somewhere and mistakes are part of the journey.
And they didn't just stay a nervous new member, did they? They eventually became a regular,
Yeah, and even started helping other newcomers who were shy.
passing on that wisdom.
Exactly. Saying things like, don't worry about being perfect, just speak. And reminding them that every word you say helps you grow.
So this whole journey, starting small, practicing with others, joining groups, it eventually built up to having what the source calls real conversations with native speakers.
Yes, like that great anecdote about meeting a Canadian traveler in a museum. For the first time, they were asked a question by a native speaker in a totally real-world situation, and they actually answered without fear.
And it wasn't just a one-word answer either. They talked for, 15 minutes?
Yeah. Made mistakes, sure, the source admits that, but they were understood and they even laughed together.
That's tangible proof right there.
Exactly. I was truly improving. It wasn't theoretical anymore. They were actually doing it. And this breakthrough motivated them to actively seek out more opportunities, talking to tourists, offering help in parks and museums.
Those small interactions felt like big victories.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then volunteering at a cultural event, welcoming people in English, even practicing lines beforehand, like, welcome, we hope you enjoy the show.
That preparation helps, right?
Definitely. It built confidence, for those specific interactions, allowing them to handle questions during the event more easily. The source uses a great analogy here to describe this whole process.
The one about speaking being like a muscle.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Speaking English is like using a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Hmm.
The more you flex it in real situations, the stronger your ability and your confidence become. Looking back on it all, the source pinpoints one thing that was most helpful in moving past the fear.
And it wasn't about achieving perfect grammar or pronunciation, was it? I remember that.
No, not at all. It was simply not trying to be perfect.
Ah.
The focus shifted entirely to communicating, just getting the message across, rather than trying to impress someone with, flawless English.
Accepting that mistakes are going to happen, even being able to laugh at yourself sometimes.
And importantly, the source adds, realizing that people laugh with you, not at you. That's a huge distinction.
Yeah.
This shift in attitude just made the entire learning process much more enjoyable and sustainable. It removed a massive source of pressure.
And this more relaxed attitude, it allowed English to start weaving its way into just daily life,
Right.
beyond the planned practice sessions.
Exactly. Simple things, like changing the language setting on their phone, listening to English music, even just talking to themselves at home sometimes.
Like narrating actions. Okay, I'm going to cook now, or where did I put my phone?
Precisely. It wasn't formal study. It was about integrating the language into everyday thoughts and actions, making it normal. The source describes this as actually living the language, not just studying it.
That distinction feels really powerful. It's training your brain to actually think in English, making it a natural part of your existence, not just, a school subject.
Yeah, and the source really emphasizes that reaching a level of fluency, it required truly living the language, actively seeking out immersion opportunities beyond just traditional study methods.
So that meant actively changing their environment and habits.
Yes. Things like watching movies without subtitles sometimes, which is tough. Listening to podcasts while doing chores or commuting. Reading books, articles, even just menus in English. It was about constantly looking for chances to interact with the language everywhere, not just waiting for a class.
And working part-time at a hostel that sounds like an incredible place for real-world practice, almost like total immersion.
Oh, a perfect environment. Constant interactions with international travelers, greeting people, giving directions, answering endless questions. They made mistakes, of course, heaps of them probably, but the source says people corrected them kindly, and those real-life corrections. They stuck with them forever, much more than a textbook correction.
And the reward wasn't just the language practice itself, right? It was connecting with people from all over, feeling useful, feeling proud of navigating those interactions.
Exactly. The source calls this no teachers, no grammar books, just real conversations. It really solidified that realization that crucial learning happens in life,
Sure.
in those messy, authentic moments, not just neatly in classrooms or from books.
But they didn't completely abandon home practice, did they?
No. They still kept a notebook for new phrases they picked up, wrote short paragraphs, and practiced speaking them aloud.
Yeah.
And here's a really insightful technique they used. Recording themselves speaking and then listening back.
Yeah, to work on pronunciation and sound more natural, that takes guts.
It does, but it's effective.
And eventually the validation came. The kind of feedback that confirms all that hard work is actually paying off.
Hearing someone genuinely say, wow, your English is really good. The source defines fluency not as perfection, but as this combination of practice persistence and the courage to speak, even when you're scared.
Thinking back to the beginning, the source revisits that initial belief, that deep-seated fear that speaking with strangers was just impossible because of the fear of looking foolish or, not being understood.
And they share another specific moment, another turning point, that helped shatter that belief even more completely. The train station anecdote. They encountered an old man who only spoke English and desperately needed help, leaving the source with basically no choice but to use their English.
And using the language they had learned up to that point, they were understood perfectly. He helped the man.
Yes, and this was a powerful discovery. It drove home the point that it wasn't about perfect English. It was about the fundamental human desire to connect and understand. That moment, successfully helping someone solely through their learned English, it just made the fear that had controlled them kind of disappear, evaporate.
And the focus became permanently fixed on communication, right?
Yeah.
Using everything available, gestures, facial expressions, tone of voice, not just worrying about grammar and pronunciation.
They became noticeably bolder, as the source puts it.
Yeah.
Started initiating conversations instead of just waiting for someone else to talk to them.
Simple things like, hi, where are you from? Or what brings you here?
Exactly.
Where
Proactive engagement.
And when there were communication breakdowns, which inevitably happen even for native speakers, they learned to handle them calmly.
Yes. Smiling, not panicking, and just simply asking for clarification. Can you repeat that? Or how do you say that again?
Ah.
They found people were almost always happy to help, happy to rephrase.
So the result of all this, a feeling of truly belonging in the English-speaking world, even if their English wasn't perfect.
And this newfound confidence, it wasn't just confined to language, was it? The source notes. It actually affected other areas of life, too. They started to walk taller. I smile more.
Wow.
The profound realization was that the fear, that huge barrier, was only ever lived in my mind. It wasn't an external reality. It was internal. And this personal journey, overcoming such a significant fear, it naturally led the source to want to help others facing those same challenges.
Right, because they remembered so vividly how difficult that initial feeling of fear and silence really was.
Yes, so they started volunteering as a speaking partner, setting up small groups with a deliberate focus on low pressure. The goal was simply just talked. No textbooks, no pressure, just conversation.
And knowing exactly how shy learners feel allowed them to offer really targeted encouragement, didn't it? Genuine praise for every little effort. You said that very well, or that's a great way to express it.
Simple, kind words can make such a huge difference when you're feeling vulnerable like that.
Absolutely.
And they made sure to teach practical phrases specifically for getting help, like, I don't know how to say this, or can you help me? Because, as the source realized, these phrases keep the conversation going. That's the key. The goal wasn't perfection. It was just to stay in conversation.
And the impact of this was pretty significant, apparently. Many of the learners became friends, achieved their own goals like studying abroad or getting new jobs.
Yeah, receiving messages like, thank you for helping me speak, must have been incredibly rewarding. It showed that helping others wasn't just about teaching. It was another way to grow oneself, improve their own skills. And it reinforced that learning is this continuous shared journey.
A final sort of major realization from the source is about how pervasive English actually is once you start really looking for it.
Exactly. It's not just in formal learning environments like classrooms or apps. It's everywhere. It's in music, on signs, in online communities, even in video games.
And the source actively sought this out, right? Joining online forums or groups based on their personal interests, photography, travel, books, commenting, asking questions, making friends across huge distances, purely through this shared language.
It truly showed the power of English as a connector. That online language exchange partner from Japan is another perfect example. They talked weekly via video calls, imperfect English on both sides. But they understood each other, they laughed, they made mistakes together, and they just kept going.
Again, not about perfection.
No, it was about the goal. Communicate and connect. That's it.
And creating moments to practice even in their own city by visiting tourist spots, offering help. Do you need directions?
Every single one of those conversations was practice, and crucially, it felt real. It wasn't like answering sterile textbook questions. It was using the language to interact with the actual world, which made them feel like a real speaker.
These small interactions built strength over time. They stopped waiting for the right moment and started actively creating those moments.
Yeah, like helping someone order coffee or explaining how to use public transport. Little things.
And staying calm when they didn't know a word, using other words they knew, or just asking for help instead of shutting down.
The source realized that English is this incredible global tool, a bridge between cultures, between ideas, between people. And they weren't just a learner observing that bridge anymore. They were a speaker, actively walking across it with, increasing ease. Finding English everywhere started to feel less like a challenge and more like finding home in a way.
Making the world feel smaller, more accessible, full of new possibilities for connection.
So, to kind of bring all this together, the source offers some really direct advice, speaking right to you, the listener, who might be feeling that same fear or uncertainty right now.
And they say, very directly, I understand, I've been there. Offering that powerful reassurance that the fear you feel now will not last forever.
And the core message is this direct correlation. The more you speak, the less fear you'll have.
Yeah.
It's almost mathematical. Every single time you open your mouth and try, you are actively moving forward, chipping away at that fear.
And they recap the actionable advice we've been discussing. Definitely start small. Talk to yourself, use a mirror, repeat sentences daily. Little things.
Use media actively. Watch videos, mimic the sounds you hear, and crucially, record your own voice and listen back. It helps you hear yourself and improve. These are the little habits that add up and build that basic comfort.
Don't get too bogged down in grammar right at the beginning. Prioritize just getting comfortable with speaking and listening first.
And embrace mistakes. View them as essential steps because, as the source says, mistakes are your teachers. Learn from them. Don't let them paralyze you.
Actively find people to talk to, whether it's joining groups, volunteering, interacting with travelers, finding online partners, seek out interaction.
And this is so important.
Yeah.
Don't wait for perfect English. Use the English you have now. It's by using it that it gets better. You can't wait until it's perfect to start.
Confidence isn't something you wait for before you start speaking. It's something you actually gain by the act of speaking itself. Confidence doesn't come before speaking, it comes from speaking. Even a tiny 5-minute conversation can feel like a life-changing victory.
Remember, the goal isn't necessarily sounding exactly like a native speaker. It's about clear, honest, confident communication. It's about being yourself and using English as this amazing tool to become a better, more connected version of yourself. The real power, the source insists, isn't just in the language itself, but it's in you, your desire, your practice, and your courage to try.
Their final encouragement is just so direct. Speak, make mistakes, laugh, learn, connect. Simple as that. And that powerful reassurance, you don't need permission to speak English. You already have everything you need.
Ending with their personal story as the proof. I'm just one person who did it, and you can too. It truly is just one word, one sentence, one small conversation at a time.
This deep dive into finding your voice, learning to speak English, it really takes us on a remarkable journey, doesn't it? From being absolutely frozen by fear,
Yeah.
feeling trapped inside, to becoming this confident speaker who genuinely found their voice and, as the source puts it, really became someone new because of it.
Yeah, it really distills the core recipe for success, doesn't it? Pulled directly from lived experience, that consistent daily effort, seeking out real conversations rather than just theoretical practice, shifting the focus away from unattainable perfection toward the much more meaningful goal of genuine connection, and critically, learning to embrace mistakes as just fundamental parts of the learning process, not as failures to be ashamed of.
Yeah. And what really stands out for me is how the source mentions this newfound confidence just rippled outwards, affecting other parts of their life, walking taller, smiling more. That's fascinating.
It really leaves you with something significant to consider, doesn't it? How overcoming a single, really significant personal barrier, like this fear of speaking in a new language, can act as a kind of catalyst. It might unlock potential and foster growth, not just in that specific skill, but maybe across all areas of your life, extending far beyond the language itself. Something to think about.
Okay, let's dive right into this source material. Finding your voice, speaking English with confidence. Now, this isn't a textbook or a grammar guide.
No, not at all. It's a personal story, someone basically walking us through that, very real process of getting over the fear of speaking English.
And that feels so relevant, doesn't it, for anyone listening who's maybe learning English or, frankly, tackling any new skill where fear holds them back?
Exactly. This narrative, it really promises those immediate, actionable insights. It starts with a feeling that I think a lot of people can connect with, being trapped inside my own mind.
Oh, yeah, that feeling where you understand everything going on, the words are sort of rattling around in your head, but when you actually have to speak,
It completely frees up.
yeah, scared of making a mistake, thinking people will judge you or, laugh.
And that fear, it's not just like a minor inconvenience. It actively stops you from practicing, from making connections. The source actually highlights this one specific moment.
The coffee shop.
Yes. The coffee shop incident. A tourist asks a question in English. They understood it, perfectly.
But couldn't reply, just couldn't get the words out.
Right. Maybe just a nod, a point, and the feeling afterward.
Crushing. Embarrassment, regret, thinking that was a chance to practice.
And according to the source, that specific moment, that feeling, that was the turning point.
Sometimes it takes that frustration, doesn't it, to really push you.
It does. You realize the fear is actually costing you something real.
So our mission for this deep dive is, well, to unpack this journey. What were the concrete steps the source took?
Yeah. And what were the mindset shifts, those aha moments that kind of unlocked things.
Exactly. We want to trace that path from being, paralyzed by fear to actually speaking with confidence and see how those lessons apply more broadly.
It's about understanding how confidence is built, really, using this personal story as like a case study.
Okay, let's get into it then. Section 1. So immediately after that coffee shop thing, that same night, they sat down and made a plan.
Which is key, isn't it? Not just feeling bad, but taking immediate, deliberate action. A conscious choice.
And the first steps were pretty basic, almost surprisingly so. Writing down common phrases.
Yeah, things like, can I help you? Or, I don't understand. Really practical stuff.
And then, crucially, practicing saying them out loud.
Even in the mirror. Which, okay, might feel a bit awkward at first.
Sure, but what do you think that achieves? Repeating simple things like that.
Well, I think it's about building that basic comfort. Getting your mouth used to the sounds, And it's about small wins. Successfully saying, can I help you? In the mirror. It's a tiny victory.
It chips away at the fear of just making the sounds.
Exactly. And alongside that, they had this important realization from listening to native speakers online.
Right. What do they notice?
They noticed that, in normal conversation, people often use pretty simple words, short sentences. It wasn't super complex grammar all the time.
Which led to that big insight. Didn't need to be perfect, just needed to try.
That sounds simple, but why is it so hard for learners to really believe that?
Oh, it's huge. Because the fear often comes from this immense pressure to be perfect right away, to sound like a native. Realizing that actually simple communication works. That lifts a massive weight.
It shifts the goalpost, doesn't it? From perfection to just connecting.
Precisely. And that gave them the courage to make a really important commitment.
Which was?
Speaking English every single day, no matter what, even if it was just one sentence.
Even with mistakes. The mantra was, one sentence a day is better than none. Consistency.
Exactly, building that habit. Okay, so from practicing alone, the next step was naturally involving someone else.
Right. The source mentions practicing with a cousin. Also learning.
Yeah, just 10 minutes every afternoon, really low stakes, using dictionaries, phones, trying to make it fun.
And the impact. After a few weeks, the fear started to lessen. They could actually ask and answer simple questions like, what do you like to do? Small steps. But they really boosted confidence.
It shows how that safe, supportive practice helps bridge the gap.
Definitely. And at the same time, they started using immersion techniques. Watching English videos.
With subtitles on, pausing, repeating the sounds.
Yes, actively mimicking the pronunciation, the rhythm. Training the ears and mouth, as they put it. It's active engagement, not just passive listening.
And then came, well, a bigger step. Joining an online language group.
Which brought back the nerves, of course, speaking with strangers online.
But they did it anyway. Introduced themselves, spoke slowly. And how did that go?
Surprisingly well. People were kind, patient. Some were even learning their language, so there was this mutual understanding.
Ah, so it wasn't the scary, judgmental place they'd imagined.
Not at all. And that feeling after each conversation, even if they made mistakes, pride. It felt more natural over time. It proved the small steps were working.
Which then fueled the desire for an even bigger step, right?
Yep. Joining an actual in-person English conversation club in their city.
Okay, now that sounds intimidating. First day.
Intense fear. Hands shaking, seeing everyone else chatting away comfortably. The urge to just turn around and leave was strong.
But they didn't. That little voice piped up.
You've come this far, don't stop now. So they stayed. Just sat quietly at first.
Until introduction.
Heart pounding. Stood up, shaky voice, but said, hello, my name is David. I'm learning English because I want to talk to people and travel. Simple. Direct.
And the reaction.
People clapped, smiled. Someone even said, great job. And that right there was a huge boost of confidence.
Wow. It shows how just trying, being vulnerable is often met with support.
Absolutely. And the club activities, like games, forced them to ask questions, give opinions, even when they weren't sure of the words. Corrections were kind.
And this led to another really important discovery.
That most people aren't really focused on your grammar mistakes. They just want to understand your meaning.
How does internalizing that change things for a speaker?
It's liberating. It shifts your focus from linguistic accuracy to just getting your message across. The pressure just drops. You can relax a bit and use what you do know.
And hearing the club organizers share their own story of starting out scared.
That helped normalize the whole experience. Everyone starts somewhere. Mistakes are okay. They're part of the journey. validation from someone who's been there.
Okay, so building on the club, there was a real breakthrough moment in the wild, so to speak, meeting a tourist.
Yeah, a traveler from Canada in a museum. And for the first time, they answered questions without that crippling fear taking over.
How long did they talk?
About 15 minutes. Made mistakes, sure, but they were understood. They even laughed together. It wasn't practice anymore. It was real connection.
That must have felt amazing. Proof of real progress.
Huge proof. And it motivated them to actively seek out more of those interactions, talking to tourists in parks, offering help, like, do you need directions?
Those small conversations became big victories.
Exactly. Each one reinforcing that they could communicate. Volunteering at an event, practicing lines, answering questions, it all built that feeling that English wasn't this scary thing, but a tool.
Which led to that analogy. Speaking English is like a muscle.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Simple, but powerful. And the focus shifted again, crucially,
Away from perfection.
towards just communicating, not trying to impress anyone, accepting mistakes, even laughing at themselves.
And realizing people were laughing with them, not at them. That sounds like a game changer.
It makes the whole process less terrifying, more enjoyable even. And this relaxed attitude helped English seep into daily life.
Like changing their phone language.
Yeah, listening to English music, talking to themselves at home, simple stuff like, okay, I'm going to make coffee now.
Why is that kind of integration so effective? Just talking to yourself?
Because, as the source says, it trained my brain to think in English. It stops being a separate subject you study and starts becoming part of how you live.
So learning isn't just in the classroom.
It happens in life.
Yeah.
All the time.
Okay, so let's talk more about breaking that fear of speaking with strangers. Initially, it seemed impossible, right?
Totally. The fear of looking foolish, of not being understood, it's a powerful barrier.
But then came another one of those unplanned moments at the train station.
Right. An older man needed help, didn't speak the local language. Suddenly, there was no choice but to speak English.
Forced into action.
Exactly. Had to use everything they'd learned. And the result.
They were understood perfectly.
That simple interaction changed the way I saw everything. It just clicked.
It really hammered home that point about people just wanting to connect.
Yeah, that most people aren't grammar police. They just want to understand and be understood.
Mm.
A powerful discovery.
And that's when the fear really started to fade.
It seemed like it.
Mm.
Worrying less about grammar or pronunciation, focusing entirely on getting the message across, using hands, facial expressions, whatever it took.
Becoming bolder, actually starting conversations.
Instead of waiting. Asking simple things like, hi, where are you from? Learning something new every time.
It reinforces that idea. Start small and grow from there. It's incremental.
Absolutely. And handling those moments where you don't understand or can't explain something,
Instead of giving up,
smiling, asking, can you repeat that? Or how do you say that again? And finding that people were almost always happy to help.
that vulnerability actually builds connection.
It does. And it led to this feeling of belonging, like they were part of the English-speaking world, even if they weren't perfect.
And you could see the change physically, too.
Yeah, walking taller, smiling more, feeling proud, actively looking for chances to speak English, not avoiding them, realizing the fear,
Had only ever lived in my mind.
and facing it brought freedom. Freedom to speak, connect, and grow.
And this idea of living the language continued. Movies without subtitles.
Podcasts while cleaning, reading menus, articles, integrating it completely.
Working at a hostel sounds like it was amazing for that.
Oh yeah, a perfect place to practice, with travelers from everywhere. Mistakes happened, but corrections were kind, and they stuck. It was learning through real, constant conversation.
No teachers, no grammar books, just real conversation.
But they still did personal practice too, right? Keeping a notebook.
Writing short paragraphs, recording themselves to listen back. Why is recording yourself actually helpful? It sounds kind of cringeworthy.
It can feel that way, but it gives you objective feedback. You hear yourself as others do, your pronunciation, your flow. It's actually a really good tool for self-correction once you get over the initial awkwardness.
And eventually the validation starts coming from others.
People saying, wow, your English is really good. Which isn't just nice to hear, it's proof that all that hard work pays off.
It confirms their definition of fluency: practice, persistence, and the courage to speak.
Exactly. And then, interestingly, the journey kind of turned outwards, helping others.
Right, remembering their own initial shyness and volunteering as a speaking partner for new learners.
Yeah, in small, low-pressure groups. Being empathetic, understanding that fear, Using specific encouragement, like, you said that very well.
Because kind words make a huge difference when you're feeling vulnerable.
Absolutely. And they shared practical tips for helping keeping it simple. Using body language, modeling phrases like, how do you say? The goal was always connection, not perfection.
And helping others actually help them too.
Definitely. Teaching forces you to think about the language differently, reinforces your own understanding. It showed that learning really never ends.
And they also talk about finding English everywhere, right? Not just in formal learning settings.
Music, signs, online communities based on hobbies, photography, travel, whatever. Joining forums, commenting, making friends across borders through that shared language.
That online friendship example is great with the person from Japan.
Yeah, imperfect English on both sides, weekly calls, but they connected, laughed, made mistakes, kept going. It underlines that the goal is communication, not perfect grammar.
And they kept creating those real-world moments too, seeking out tourists, offering help.
Using English naturally, feeling like a real speaker. And crucially, when they didn't know a word, they didn't panic anymore.
Right. They'd stay calm, use other words, ask for help. That lack of panic made all the difference.
It's a sign of true confidence, being able to navigate those moments smoothly,
They end up calling English this global tool, a bridge.
connecting cultures, ideas, people, and feeling like they could walk across that bridge easily now, not just a learner looking in, but a speaker living it.
Finding English in unexpected places starts to feel like home. The world feels smaller, more open.
It's a powerful transformation, and the source offers a really direct message for anyone listening who feels stuck in that fear.
They say essentially, I get it, I've been there.
And they make a promise. The fear you feel now will not last forever. The more you speak, the less fear you'll have. Every attempt, no matter how small, is progress.
So the key advice boils down to
Start small, really small. Talk to yourself, use the mirror, mimic videos, record your voice. Those little habits add up.
don't get bogged down by grammar right at the start. Focus on speaking and listening first to build that initial momentum.
See mistakes as teachers. Learn from them. Don't let them stop you. Keep going.
Find people to talk to. Actively seek them out. Online groups, exchanges, volunteering, create those opportunities.
And please, don't wait for perfect English. Use the English you have now. Using it is how it gets better.
Confidence doesn't come before you speak.
It comes from speaking. Even 5 minutes a day can change your life.
And you don't need to sound like a native speaker. Just aim for clear, honest, confident communication. You're becoming a better version of yourself.
Exactly. English is just the tool. The real power comes from you. Your desire, your practice, your courage.
The final message is so direct. Speak, make mistakes, laugh, learn, connect.
You don't need permission to speak English. You already have everything you need.
It's a journey taken one word at a time, one sentence at a time.
So we've traced this incredible shift, haven't we? From feeling completely trapped by fear to being a confident communicator engaging with the world.
And it wasn't magic. It was consistent effort, real-world practice, and that fundamental mindset shift communication over perfection.
And the source ends with this thought, which I really like. Learning English wasn't just about mastering a skill. It changed who they were. It was about becoming someone new through that process.
Which leaves us with a question for you listening now. What version of yourself might you become? What opens up when you finally face that fear? Stop waiting for perfect and start speaking. Or start doing whatever that thing is you've been holding back on.